Welcome to this episode of How to Really Run a City, powered by Accelerator for America, the nation's leading do tank for cities. I'm Larry Platt of the Philadelphia Citizen, a nonprofit, nonpartisan media organization that seeks to reinvigorate democracy in the American city where it was born. Check us out at thephiladelphiacitizen.org. How to Really Run a City features two accomplished practitioners of the art of urban changemaking, former two-term Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed and former two-term Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter. If you've listened to past episodes, you know the drill. If you're frustrated by the bickering and the anger and the, quite frankly, stupidity coming out of Washington, D.C., well, this podcast is a testament to the notion that there are really three political parties in America: Democrats, Republicans, and mayors who have no choice but to be practical problem solvers. In today's episode, the mayors talk with Garrett Langley, founder of Flock Safety, who has a great story. His innovative technology and automated license plate recognition system is helping to reduce crime in many cities. So let's get to the mayors, the stars of our show, and Garrett Langley.
Hey, what's going on? How you doing?
Good, man. Last time I saw you, we were on a Zoom, and you were showing off those biceps, man.
Man, please, you got jokes. I'm just trying to stay alive.
No, I loved it. You were all summered out.
I saw y'all had a big day for Will Smith up there.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, they renamed part of the street by Overbrook after him, or where he went to high school, Overbrook High School.
Oh yeah. No, I didn't even see that. I haven't seen him in ages. You know, he's a part owner of the Sixers, a minority owner of the Sixers.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but the season they're having, no one's copping any connection.
Yeah, Usher owned part of the Cavaliers. I don't know if he still does or not, but he did. I think he was a part owner when they won the championship.
Well, I still think one of the coolest things of your mayoralty is when they gave you a jersey. The Hawks gave you a jersey.
Yeah, no, after $150 million renovation. That's the most expensive hung jersey ever.
That's an expensive jersey, but that's a very cool thing. I would.
Yeah, it was nice. They actually sell that thing, which is really funny. You can buy one.
Is that right? You can buy a Reed jersey?
Yeah. I mean, I bought some for my family.
Oh,
sure did.
I think we're gonna have to buy one for the whole Citizen team. Nutter never got a jersey.
I wouldn't do that. I know he just got championships. You know what I mean?
That's right.
That's definitely what he would say. You know. Man, we got so close, and Tom Brady took it from us. I'm telling you, I wanted that Super Bowl ring so badly.
You were up like 28-3 at halftime, I think.
Yeah. And
that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I still ache. Yeah, my wound still has not closed.
What kind of difference would that have made to the city? I mean, obviously, is there an economic difference, or is it just more psyche?
I think psyche. You know, the Braves broke through and won a World Series, and I think championships matter to the connectivity of a city, because sports just goes through so much crap. You know what I mean? And when you have winning teams, it does something to the city. I mean, you can feel it in the air. I know you know in Philly, but it does something that I don't think that you can really put a price on. That and our owner is just a really terrific man. I mean, Arthur Blank is just one of the humans I've ever met, and he's done more than $300 million in philanthropy directed at Atlanta, and he wanted it really badly, and I was sitting right next to him.
He'd be great to get on one of our episodes, because I think he's just a great civic. I remember when they were in the Super Bowl, he took the entire front office, everyone who worked for, which most owners don't do. He took everyone connected to the team to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I used to refer to him as Batman. He was the number that I called when we had a real problem.
And who's not going to say, whose first response isn't what's in it for me, right?
No question. Yeah.
He sees it
For
beyond.
me, it was Arthur and Richard Anderson, who I saw at the 100th anniversary for Delta the other night, and we just sat there talking until the program started. I missed him so much.
Who is Richard Anderson? I'm sorry.
He was the CEO of Delta Airlines.
Oh,
He's the
Delta.
reason that Delta is in Atlanta and not in Minneapolis.
Ah.
West acquired Delta. Delta didn't acquire Northwest. So typically in transactions like that, Northwest would have been the headquarters. And then to add a degree of difficulty, Congressman Oberstar was chairing transportation that had to approve the merger. And he still kept it in Atlanta.
Wow. That's corporate. That's a sense of corporate responsibility.
Yeah. And we really owe it to his wife, Susan.
How so?
During the negotiation of the merger, she fell in love with the city.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I see that Garrett has joined us.
Yeah.
Hi, Garrett. How are you?
Garrett?
Good, man. I don't feel like I've seen you virtually or in person in too long.
That's right. It has been. This is the new Batman.
Yeah.
Was the old Batman.
I will,
Garrett's the new Batman.
I will take that. I might not have the same capital capacity as Arthur. I think I'm missing a couple zeros,
Yeah.
maybe 3,
Yeah.
4. But I do have impact. I can definitely speak to that. So but yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's very nice.
I'm proud of you.
I appreciate that, man.
Hey, Garrett, it's great to meet you. We're waiting on Mayor Nutter. Our sort of inside joke here is that the mayor is always 5 minutes out. So as soon as he comes, we'll just dive right in.
There's the professor.
You guys.
The professor.
I heard you earlier. All that shit talking that was going on. I couldn't see you. Something going on with my phone, but I'm good now. Garrett, great to see you, and sorry you've been subjected to, I'm sure, some level of abuse from these two.
No, it's a pleasure to meet you.
It's good to see you as well.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it.
Ready.
So again, mayors, we'd be remiss not to touch on the shit show that is national news. And today we're about a week out after Jeffrey Goldberg's bombshell in the Atlantic, whereby he was included on essentially classified text chain war messaging among the Secretary of Defense and others.
A quick editor's note here that this episode was recorded before it was known how widely Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth used Signal to conduct official Pentagon business. Additionally, this was before National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who added journalist Jeffrey Goldberg to the March Signal chat, was nominated by President Trump to become the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations.
And I have to say, I feel sorry for the writers at Saturday Night Live, because I don't know how you can parody this stuff. But I was thinking about the two of you, because I thought we could use this to have a quick talk, get your perspective on the issue of leadership, because, there's been no accountability. There's been no one, obviously this is a major national security issue, and there's been no accountability. And I wondered if you've experienced times when you have to hold someone accountable, someone that you like, someone that your base might like, but you have to hold them accountable. And I don't see any of that coming from this administration on something that I don't care where you are on the political spectrum. This endangered national security. So I just wanted to see if you had any thoughts.
I mean, my thoughts are, I wish I could make light of it if we didn't have the most potent military force in the history of mankind. And to show the manner in which that kind of power and unique capability is being used and misused and not cared for and treated with reverence is why I think it's a moment that we each need to deeply reflect on. Because at the end of that text thread were men and women who do things that none of us on this call could conceive of doing. And anything that is done to put their mission, and more important than their mission, their life and their families at stake, because if they lose someone, their families are forever changed. I just think it's something that is so consequential that it can't even, we can't even make light of it.
Yeah. The cavalier nature of this whole thing, and even, it's hard to say even the Trump administration response, because there really hasn't been much response. But the things that they have said, just defy. We've talked about this before. Mayor Reed speaks very eloquently about norms. I have to admit, I'm actually, given what's been going on, I'm actually surprised that there were like some congressional hearings on this. It seems like the Republicans seem to actually want to express some concern and have a hearing, or the people were called in or whatever. But their responses were so, I'd use the word again, so cavalier, so dismissive of any kind of accountability that, accountability, Larry, starts at the top. Mayor Reed and I'm quite sure, often just had to make tough decisions, especially about people from time to time. And, they're close to you, or they maybe worked on the campaign, or, you've known them 10, 15, 20 some odd years. But at least at the local level, when, just going to say it, when you fuck up, people notice. And at least your local press corps, you just can't act like, nothing to see here. What are you talking about? Never heard of that magazine. But it's kind of a learning moment or something. But from time to time, a head has to roll.
Yeah.
And you have to do that to try to reassure people that you are in charge, in control, in command, and that you are going to adhere to some norms that people have a right to expect. And that is, again, being demonstrated is not the case with this group of people.
Yeah, the response has been to attack Jeffrey Goldberg, the journalist who was invited onto this text chain, and who, by the way, is a pretty conservative guy. So it's not like he's some, progressive.
But most people know, kind of the general concept of right and wrong. And apparently wasn't going to put the stuff out there until they started lying. Right. He's like, well, wait, you're not going to gaslight me. I was there. I know what y'all were doing. I know what you were talking about. I was reading it, in real time. And so, how about just admit that you messed up? This is this whole never back up, never back down, never acknowledge, always keep moving. That is right out of the Trump book 101.
Yeah, and hope that the conversation moves on.
Yeah, Roy Cohn and all that.
Right. Well, I wanted to get another great lesson in leadership out of this. So I wanted to get your perspective on that. So thank you. Let's welcome our guest, Atlanta's Garrett Langley, founder of Flock Safety. Remember in 2023 when a man walked into a hospital in Midtown Atlanta and shot 5 people, injuring 3 critically and killing 1? The suspect quickly fled the scene and the entire city went into lockdown, and officers apprehended the shooter within like 8 hours. And then remember when during the presidential campaign, a would-be assassin was lying in wait outside of Trump's country club. That suspect was arrested after an hour of fleeing the scene. Well, Flock Safety's license plate reading camera technology was the key to both high-profile arrests. Flock does business with, I don't know, some 5,000 municipal law enforcement agencies, and it is changing the speed with which police react in times of crisis. And I first learned about Flock through the testimony of Mayor Reed, and the more I heard, the more I thought this one-time startup holds the key to next generations of keeping cities safe. So, Garrett, welcome to How to Really Run a City.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to see everyone.
Hey, Garrett.
It's great to see you. Let's start with your great origin story before we break down exactly what your technology does. My understanding is the roots of all this go back to 2017 when you're living in Mayor Reed's Atlanta and your house gets broken into, and somehow that jump-started an idea for you.
Yeah, no,
Get your TV back.
yeah, exactly. No, it's funny, Mayor. I'm not sure if it's the case in Philly, but at least in the case in Atlanta, there's a joke, or at least it's funny, where look, if you break into 10 F-150s, you're going to find at least one firearm. And that's pretty good business if you're 16 and looking to go do something worse.
Wow.
And I'm sure that's not just Atlanta. I'm sure if you go to Memphis, you go to Oakland, you pick your major city, and like, look, people leave their guns and laptops in their cars. And so to your point about 7 years ago, and I'm a Georgia Tech engineer, so I like building stuff. And about 7 years ago, my entire neighborhood was the victim of what was clearly very organized. Very organized group of people came in, hit up a bunch of houses and cars. And to APD, our police department's credit, you know, the major I'm in zone 2, and the major shows up the next day for my community, and we're upset. We're like, what are you going to do? And there was a bit of a shrug. And my, let's call it uneducated perspective as a citizen was a shrug of apathy. Of, oh, you're zone 2, no one got hurt, this is nonviolent, I got bigger fish to fry. And so I pulled the major aside and I was like, you got to help me understand, like, we're not the only neighborhood that's getting hit. This clearly wasn't a 16-year-old just having fun one night. This was planned. This was organized. What gives? And he was like, you know, Mr. Langley, what do you expect me to do? We're going to go dust for fingerprints? Like, come on, let's be realistic. We're a big city. We got big problems. And I was like, all right, well, what do you need? So obviously you're not going to run fingerprints. And I was like, I got a doorbell camera. Does that help? And he was like, that doesn't help. A blurry picture of a guy in a hoodie in the middle of the night is not going to help me do anything. Okay, what do you need? And he was like, I need a license plate. License plate? That's not, how is that going to help? And he was like, the thing that I don't have is evidence. And if you look across the country, Atlanta was not unique. There's about a 1 in 10 chance you get arrested if you commit a non-violent crime in America. And my assumption as a citizen was, it was, like I said, apathy. It was energy. This guy doesn't want to help me. But you can look at government official salaries online. It's like this guy's making a lot of money. So he's clearly not in the job for money. He's in the job for more altruistic reasons. And he said, I need a license plate. So I said, okay, great. I went to Georgia Tech. I can build anything. As a bit of a motto here in town. And so I called 2 of my buddies from Georgia Tech. We went to college together and said, I got to build this camera. This police officer says that if we have this camera that can read a license plate, he'll actually do something with it. And so we built 7 of them. I have 7 egress points to my neighborhood. So we built this thing, put them up, and look, I'm an electrical engineer, not an electrician. So I was afraid of maybe like running power or like getting electrocuted. So we took a bunch of old Android phones, and Mayor Reed he's been to our office, he's seen these things. These were not pretty, but we took a bunch of old cell phones, tore them apart, attached them to bigger batteries, attached them to a solar panel, right? Because like cell phones are pretty good at taking pictures. They don't use that much power. So we had these ugly looking devices all across the neighborhood. And about 2 months later, that same group came back. And this time when the major roll it in the next morning. I was like, here is the only car that doesn't live in this neighborhood that was here last night. And I get goosebumps every time I share this story because it doesn't seem real to me. He then puts a bolo out across the entire APD system for this vehicle. Within an hour, that person is pulled over. Stolen guns, driver's license. I mean, it's a honeypot. Guy gets arrested. That evening, the local news comes to the neighborhood. We show these cameras. They're, like I said, they're hideous. 5 more neighborhoods sign up. And it begins this thing where what I'm sure the mayors already know, which is they have very hardworking men and women in their law enforcement. If you give those men and women good tools, they will do their job. And they will do their job a lot better. And I'll never forget, I got that phone call from the major, and he was like, "We got the guy." And I was like, "What? Like, this is crazy." And that was, like I said, 7 years ago. And you fast forward today, and we've got about just over 5,000 cities we support, including Atlanta, obviously our hometown. So big cities like Atlanta and Houston and San Francisco, and then a lot of small cities too, because crime doesn't really care where cities start and stop. So whether you're a big city like Philly or Atlanta, or a small city like we were talking about earlier, a South Fulton or an East Point or a College Park, like, everyone deserves the right to be safe, and that's kind of our North Star.
What a great story.
Wow.
I just love the ingenuity and the entrepreneurship of solving a public problem.
And where are these cameras? Where?
Yeah. So Mayor, we have a interesting motto at Flock, which is we believe we have to protect the whole community. I often get asked, like, why'd you call the company Flock? And it's because we generally believe that if a community works together, it will be stronger. So we're not vigilante.com, it's flocksafety.com. And so we go everywhere. So the majority of our cameras are deployed by the city itself, right? And so if you think about a town like Atlanta, the mayor and the chief sit down and say, where do we have crime? Where do we have problems? How do we design an equitable approach to safety, covering all the different zones, city infrastructure, parks and recs, et cetera. And then individual neighborhoods are also able to sign up. And then we support some of the largest companies in the world through their campuses as well. So whether that's their headquarters, their retail establishments. So this is some of these customers prefer to be a little private. But you think about someone like Simon Malls. We have every single Simon Malls across the country covered. And there, what makes their product so powerful is you think about someone like Simon Malls. They don't have a police department. They can't make an arrest. So the whole reason they invest in the program is to support the cities they operate in. So in the case of someone like Atlanta, they have 2 large malls. We've got those malls covered. If you're an officer at APD, you don't really care who owns, who pays for the equipment. You just know, I've got cameras on Peachtree. I've got cameras in Garrett's neighborhood. I've got cameras at Simon Malls. I've got cameras at the Target over there, the Home Depot, whatever. The list kind of goes on, and it's a seamless experience for that law enforcement operator.
But I mean, here's what I saw, which is why I wanted Garrett on. When you're a mayor, we look at rape, murder, and robbery. So if it wasn't a rape, murder, or robbery, from a priority standpoint, that's what moves mayors to decisive action. Mm-hmm. That leaves a whole cadre of humans who've been violated by crime. And if you don't have evidence, which is what Flock provides you, it provides you with a tip, meaning something that a good law enforcement officer that's fully loaded is costing $100,000 to $120,000. The city's police force at its largest was 2,000, and you're not going to hire your way out of this kind of crime.
Right.
And so I visited the UK, Mayor Nutter, and they took me into their video integration system. First of all, they blindfolded me. I don't know if you ever went to see it, but they blindfolded me and then took me into some tunnel like a James Bond movie before they unveiled the thing.
Were you captured?
I was not captured. I was a free man.
But you in one of them vans with the side door.
Hey man,
it took you away.
Confident. But the bottom line is, when they took me several floors underground and opened up. They had a video of all of London. And what they had was the capability to see all of London and to deploy police officers based upon what they were seeing.
Right. That
After seeing
CCTV
that in
network is
London,
expensive.
CCTV, I came back to Atlanta and grew our camera network by 600%.
Damn.
So that meant integrating the cameras that already existed, capabilities that were added by Flock, and APD's camera system, which is a force multiplier for police forces. But what Flock does is, Marinetta, they care about the TV that got stolen.
Right.
When you and I know that that TV is not our priority because nobody got killed, raped, or robbed.
Right.
I think that the thing too, that we've noticed is very rarely do people steal a car for fun. And those non-violent crimes very quickly become violent if you're not careful. And so agree with you. I think one of the things we've noticed too in the business community, which I get, is it's really hard to be a police chief and prioritize the business community. They don't vote. They don't show up at city council and complain. And what we've seen, though, in some other cities, and it's not hard to think about who they are on the West Coast, when you give up on the business community, though, and they start to leave,
then
then you've got a whole other problem on your hand. And so it is like you kind of have to cover you got to be able to you got to protect the whole community. But I mean, it's hard. And I don't think humans alone solve the problem.
Yeah. I mean, I hear people all the time talking about outdoor video surveillance, camera networks. I don't want anybody, taking my photo, this, that, the other thing. And the flip side of that is, for the most part, the cameras see the same thing that a police officer walking a beat would see. Folks have Ring cameras now in their homes. Any ATM actually has a camera in it. And so, this idea, folks want us to solve crime, prevent crime, but use, strategies and tactics from the 1950s when virtually nothing existed. I mean, we're not dealing with Colombo and Joe Friday here. Some of the listeners, you can go on the Google machine and look up Joe Friday. So as long as you have standards, it's not intrusive, and you don't abuse it, and everybody understands what you can and cannot do. The criminals don't have they don't have standards. They don't have rules. They don't have I only operate in certain hours. Their whole thing. I mean, if you are, really in the criminal enterprise, your whole thing is not to be detected, not to be seen, not to be captured. And so, cities, leaders, have to fight back and still play by the rules.
And to be clear here, Garrett, you're just reading license plates, right? There is no further quote unquote surveillance.
Yeah. I mean, so we have a broad portfolio of products at this point. So if you go to some of our towns, like let's pick a city close to Mayor Reed and me, just up north of us, a town called Dunwoody. It's wrong, maybe 70,000 people, growing community. They're thriving. They have our license plate reading cameras. They have our live video cameras. So to Mayor Reed's point, like we also have cameras. You think about Dunwoody's a beautiful city. They have a lot of parks. People don't drive cars on playgrounds. So we do have cameras that are focused more on traditional live surveillance. They have this incredible product we've developed called Flock 911, where if you've never walked into a 911 dispatch center, you might have seen that when you call 911, like every first responder knows. No. And depending on the structure, it might be a 2 to 3 minute delay before the first responder even knows you've called 911. So this product's pretty cool. As soon as a 911 call is initiated, the nearest officer is immediately notified in their device. And so for a town like Atlanta, that might be a quarter-mile radius. Hey, just let me know if I'm within like a quarter of a mile of an active 911 call. In a town like Dunwoody, that might be a half a mile. But now you're dramatically changing the pace of which an officer can respond. And then Dunwoody also has our drones. So we manufacture drones here in Georgia. And so now you think about all this comes together, and there's a 911 call before the victim has even hung up. Dunwoody has launched a drone. And in under 80 seconds, they've got live audio, video on site, way faster than a human ever can get there. So we definitely have a broader platform, but I think what Mayor Nutter was describing is important, which is every single thing we just talked about went in front of city council. And as a citizen of that town, you elect people, it's a democratic election process, right, to make decisions for you. And something that's really important in all the products we have is this concept of both transparency and auditing. So it's not my job to police the police. It's actually the mayor's job and the city manager's job to police the police. If you got bad cops or a bad chief, you get rid of them and you find someone better for your city. But so in that case, every action someone takes in our system is stored in perpetuity. And our average city reviews that audit log either every week or every month with their city manager, because you understand what's happening. And what's really interesting is that depending on the city, you can choose to be as transparent as you'd like. So for some of our towns, you pick on someone like Piedmont, California, a great city. It's in the Bay Area. Every search conducted in our system is publicly available with a 1-day delay. I think that's great. That makes sense for them. But you go to maybe a different town, pick somewhere like, pick Dallas, Texas, another great city. They don't think that's necessary for them. Now, the city manager has access to that audit log, but it's not publicly available. And that's, as a business, our whole philosophy is we're going to give the mayor and city manager and the police chief all the tools to do what's right for them. But one of the beautiful things about America is what makes sense in Austin might not make sense in Atlanta, and it might not make sense in New York, and it might make sense in Boston. So we got to give them those kind of knobs and controls, because it's a beautiful country, but it's a very diverse country in terms of what people want, in terms of their privacy, in terms of their transparency by city administration. So we think about our job as being kind of the behind the scenes and let the elected officials do their job too.
Let's take a quick break from our conversation to hear from our partner, Accelerator for America. Ross Van Dongen is the Chief of Infrastructure and Workforce Development at AFA, and he wanted to draw our attention to this week being Infrastructure Week.
This is Ross Van Dongen, the Chief of Infrastructure and Workforce Development and the Director of United for Infrastructure, here to tell you that May 12th through May 16th is Infrastructure Week and Economic Development Week in America. So today, I want to take a minute to celebrate the many ways that investing in our nation's infrastructure is economic development. Well-designed infrastructure facilitates efficient transportation of goods, reduces overall costs of doing business, and helps get our residents to work, to school, and new opportunities. In our cities, street-level investment can help support small business corridors, and transit investments can spur new housing development. In Kalamazoo, Michigan, for example, the city was awarded a $38 million federal grant to upgrade its stormwater infrastructure around Arcadia Creek. The creek regularly floods during moderate and heavy storm events, impacting dozens of downtown properties. By investing in more resilient infrastructure, the city is able to support the redevelopment of a previously flood-prone site. A new privately funded $300 million event center is now under construction and is estimated to generate over $54 million of annual economic impact and create up to 700 jobs. The adjacent neighborhoods and their business districts can now thrive without the threat of flooding. In Waterloo, Iowa, Mayor Quentin Hart, a member of Accelerator for America's Advisory Council, witnessed firsthand the challenges experienced by his residents trying to work remotely or access education during the COVID-19 pandemic. His constituents lacked access to affordable and reliable broadband connections. Using $25 million in American Rescue Plan funds, a $1.8 million EDA grant, and $20 million raised through a voter-supported city bond, the city of Waterloo was able to create a municipal broadband network, Waterloo Fiber, to offer faster, more affordable, and locally owned and operated broadband services to residents and businesses alike. Investing in infrastructure is itself a job creator. The Federal Highway Administration estimates that every $1 billion invested in highway and bridge infrastructure supports at least 13,000 jobs across the U.S. economy. United for Infrastructure Steering Committee partners, the American Society of Civil Engineers, recently released its 2025 report card for America's infrastructure, awarding our nation's infrastructure a C. While that is an improvement over the prior report card, we still have a very long way to go. Join us and organizations across the country this week as we highlight how continued investment in America's infrastructure boosts our economic competitiveness, strengthens our national security, and increases our resiliency. Visit unitedforinfrastructure.org to learn more about Infrastructure Week and stay informed as Congress considers a new surface transportation bill to fund investments in state and local infrastructure.
Thanks, Ross. And now, back to the show.
It's interesting that you brought up drones because I did see that you recently purchased Aerodrome, which and that is a drone, and it's really as you explained it, a first responder technology, right? That drone is able to get to the scene and thus inform the oncoming police officers of what they're walking into. Is that right?
That's right. And Mayor Nutter, I apologize, I didn't look up, but I'm going to make an assumption that your city is not overflowing with law enforcement cadets and your academies are busting at the seams and that you look like every other city in America right now, which is no one wants to be a cop.
Yeah.
Which is not, and I don't know if that'll...
Recruitment was a problem even when I was, in office, and that was, over 10 years ago. And it's become even tougher in post-pandemic. Two things: the murder of George Floyd, and the pandemic.
And it's not. I don't think it's going to bounce back anytime.
All across the country. Across the country.
And so one of the things that's been interesting is, yes, the drone can be used as a first responder. And there's a recent situation which I'll share in a second in Dunwoody, which was pretty impactful, where it was 180 in terms of how the situation could have unfolded. But from a force multiplier perspective, you go to a town, and I think it's Alhambra, California, which is just in the LA County area. 25% of their calls for service now never involve a human. They're able to send the drone first, understand what's happening, and move on. And what that means is that for the cases and the calls for service that actually do need a human, you've got a faster response and you've got a more efficacy. Because as an officer, one of the most frustrating things is you drive 30 minutes to get 15 minutes, there's nothing there. It's a total waste of time. And so that's pretty big. On the Dunwoody case, there was this really interesting situation where there was a very violent individual shot someone in a different town. Inside a flock, that's a notification was sent out to the local metro area. Hey, here's a car, here's a bolo for a vehicle that is armed and dangerous. One of the flock cameras at a nearby mall picks them up. So private-public partnership. This mall had deployed flock cameras. We pick them up. Now, in a normal situation, the mayors know this. SWAT gets involved. Blue lights. They're coming in hot. Got a guy with a gun. And now we're talking about one of the busiest malls in Atlanta. This is a recipe for disaster. But what Dunwoody does, they send the drone first. If the drone's overhead, the drone is searching. And the drone's 400 feet up in the air. You have no idea the drone is there. Now, obviously, if you look up, you probably see it. But if you're just going about your life, you're not naturally looking up for a drone. This individual has a recognizable tattoo. So from 400 feet up in the air, they find this guy. They see the tattoo. 2 plainclothes officers walk up and take him down. No one has any idea. No guns, no blue lights, a safe apprehension of a very dangerous person. And you think about that, and it was, and they presented this to their city council the following week. This was a calm and collected operation. And I've never been a first responder, so I don't know how it interacts. But
it also takes about 45 minutes to an hour to mobilize for anything. I mean, which is out of the truth.
What was the first? Say that again, Mary. What was the first?
Mobilizing your SWAT unit, either your long rifle unit or your SWAT unit. If you have someone who's highly dangerous, from the time you give the order or your chief gives the order,
Right.
for them to be strike ready is 45 minutes to an hour. Certainly SWAT.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I mean, on the other hand, when they show up,
Yeah.
it's on.
Yeah, I know. They're there to sit a spell and to be there for whatever happens.
Right.
But after the Paris attacks,
Yeah.
speed became so far more important than policing. Rapid response capability post Paris
Right.
became so important, which caused our Chief Turner at the time, to really change our capabilities and our ability to respond rapidly. For me, it was Paris.
Right.
Number of people that were killed in Paris in 45 minutes, 40 minutes.
Yeah. There were. What was man? What was it? There were like 4 or 5 different locations.
Yeah.
With that thing, right?
Yes, one individual going from location to location to location, while the police capability was trying to mobilize
Right.
and be ready.
Yeah. 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 That was amazing and tragic at the same time.
Hey, Garrett, I want to make clear, you didn't invent license plate reader camera technology. That existed. It just was not clear, or you took it to another level technologically and then rolled it out. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's 3 things we did differently, and I'll give credit to Mayor Reed. He had a expansive network of license plate reading cameras when I started Flock. But there was 3 problems with the solution that was available in the market. The first was cost.
Cost and cost.
Yeah, well, cost and cost and cost. And
3
so if you
problems,
look at
cost and cost with 2 of them.
yeah, so our product is about 1/10 the cost of traditional systems. So you're talking about an order of magnitude reduction in cost. And these 2 gentlemen have run city budgets. It's not like they're looking to save money for fun. They're looking to save money to deploy more resources, reallocate to more important projects. And so we often find that it is less that a city is going to maybe spend less on public safety. They will just get more bang for their buck. So the number one was cost. The second one was the technology. So traditional license plate readers were developed in the 1950s and 1960s in the UK. And not to get overly technical, it uses a DSP chip and an infrared array, and it is a very analog system. Our approach was to take one of these, put it in a box, and use AI and computer vision. And the example I'd give you is in the Tesla bombings in Las Vegas earlier this week that the sheriff solved. They used one of our AI products, and the only description they had of the vehicle was that it was a black sedan with aftermarket tires. You can go into Flock and say, I'm looking for black sedans with aftermarket tires and a roof rack and a spoiler and a dent on the left corner and a little bit of rust on the right, and we will find that car. So a dramatic leap in going from just a license plate to any car. Yes, sir.
How does that happen? How you have like 6 different descriptor components to that.
It's
How do
Alfred.
how do you find that?
There's a guy named Alfred.
Yeah.
Call Alfred, and you tell Alfred.
Mayor, we realized really early on that humans very, very rarely remember a license plate in a life or death situation. They remember the weirdest things, but they normally remember something. And so from the onset,
Yeah, but most of the rest of what they remember is more often times than not wrong. And
exactly.
we know that people do not. The guy was 6 feet tall. No, actually, he was 5'7". He was black. Well, maybe not. He was, he was wide. No, actually, he's a skinny guy, right? I mean, it's just, in that moment, visualization is, that testimony gets attacked all the time in court, and is more oftentimes than not wrong.
It's very, very rarely right. And so from the onset, though, we were focused on, we got to go beyond just the license plate. We've got to go look at the entire car. We call it a vehicle fingerprint. There's about 27 unique things associated with a vehicle. What gets funny in this system is you can go in, speaking of Tesla, and you could do a search for show me futuristic cars that look like polygons, and like it'll spit out Cybertrucks. So it's pretty intelligent. So that was the second piece. And the third piece was business model. And Mayor Reed knows this one really closely. Most service providers to cities, it's a dump and run concept. I'm gonna sell you a bunch of stuff. It's gonna be really expensive, and then I'm gonna run away. And if you look at the technology and kind of business community, there has been a shift from kind of one-time CapEx purchase to moving to OpEx. And the benefit of that is, as the buyer, is that means that every single year you have a chance to decide if you like that partner, you like that vendor. And so in the case of Atlanta, I think at one point it was so bad that more than 50% of the cameras the city had purchased were inoperable.
That's right.
But there was no service contract. The vendor had no reason to want to go maintain that equipment. And so the business model is quite different, where we walk in and with something like Atlanta, the city of Atlanta's got however many cameras from Flock, let's call it a couple thousand. We're on the hook every single day to make sure that equipment works. And every single year, the chief and the mayor can go, do we still like Flock? Are they doing their job really well? They are? Great. We're going to send Flock another check for the year, and they're going to keep the equipment working. They're going to keep it upgraded. They're going to make it in tip-top shape. And then if we ever fail, then we lose that contract. And that was a radical change that took a lot of cities consternation, because they're very used to CapEx. They're used to just doing a bond for $10 million, buying a bunch of stuff, and then moving on. And we've now kind of shifted the mindset of city managers and mayors and police chiefs that, like, no, there's a better way to procure technology to have aligned incentives. So those are three big things.
So Garrett, I want you to take on your worst critics right now.
Okay.
I want you to pretend that you're giving a talk like Steve Jobs, and I have the opportunity to help you.
Yeah.
And talk to me about the steps that you take to address my personal freedom, and to make sure that because I'm Black, your technology isn't geared towards me.
Yeah. No, I think so. I'll start all the way macro, zoomed out, and then zoom in. So I think the first thing, there are some people in this country who do not believe crime is a problem and criminals should be held accountable. And I've talked to those people. They are my worst critics. And they believe that crime is an unavoidable symptom of modern society. And I personally just refuse to accept that. So for those groups, and I'm going to call that the fringe on either side of the political spectrum, I can't help them. And I have no good answers for them. But let's now talk about maybe the 95%, 98% of the population who actually wants to feel safe and wants to be safe. Then you get into, okay, how do we avoid bias? And how do we avoid kind of traditional policing, is how I would describe it. And I think, Mayor Reed, I was in a town in Alabama, a suburb of Birmingham. And I was sitting down with the mayor and the chief, and they had been on the Flock system for a couple of months. And I was asking them how it was going. And I knew kind of what to expect. I thought they were going to say, Garrett, we're lighting it up. We got this many stolen cars off the street. We got this many warrants served. With that. And it kind of took me back, because he said the biggest shift has been a cultural one. Cultural? What do you mean? I said, Garrett, traditionally, our officers patrol the same neighborhoods looking for suspicious people. And I think the four of us know what that means. They're looking for brown and Black boys between 13 and 21 who might just look suspicious. And he said, Garrett, we're too busy now. We're too busy because Flock tells us there is a stolen vehicle. There is a vehicle with a warrant attached to it. Go find it. It has nothing to do with who's driving. It has nothing to do with who's inside. It has to do with that objective fact that car is stolen. And for me, that to me is probably the most impactful part about it, which is our men and women who are officers are only going to do with what they're able to. And that is how policing was largely done for decades. And we saw the negative impacts of that. And so when you move the focus of patrol to that objective evidence, that kind of real time, this is a known criminal, not subjectively suspicious, this is a known criminal, it changes it. Now, I think to your point, though, on let's call it communities that have largely been left behind by their cities, one of the things that we try to do with our municipal partners is sit down and say, what communities want to be safer? And I had a really interesting experience in a major city recently. And I don't know if Mayor, a lot of y'all have dealt with this in your times, but there was a very contentious city council debate. And there was one, city council is always easy, right? And it was this interesting debate because there was we'll call her roughly Ivy League educated attorney who was on city council. And she looked like me. And she was worried that the introduction of license plate reading cameras was going to negatively impact the Black neighborhoods in their city. And it was fascinating because this woman stood up, a resident who lived in those communities, an elderly Black woman, and said, it's easy for you to say that because you can move anywhere in the country. But I've been in this community for multiple generations, and I want to stay here, but it's not safe. We have to make this neighborhood safer. And thankfully, the city council listened to the constituent, not just a random city council member. And I think, Mayor, what that woman understood is that safety is the bedrock of a community. And absent that bedrock, you have chaos. And for me, it is just such a simple fact that once people feel safe, they start families, they start businesses, communities start to thrive. And I think there are a number of safeguards we obviously put into the system. There's a number of things around auditing and data retention and training. But at the end of the day, I think I've yet to meet an individual who, once they take the time to understand how things work today. So I'm not saying we're perfect. We're very far from perfect. I'm just arguing that we are an order of magnitude better than how things work today in cities that don't have flock.
So are you leaning into fairness around AI and your application of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I'm not sure if I would go with the word fairness. I would go with the word constitutional. Like, we've got a constitution that establishes what parts of who you are protected. And so in our AI products, we have those safeguards. And I'll give you an easy example. Religion is protected, right? You cannot be prosecuted based off your religious beliefs. Let's say, for instance, you wanted to do a search for a Israeli bumper sticker or a Palestine bumper sticker. Is that a constitutional violation? It's a tricky question. So what we do is we have two different modes of safeguards. There are speed bumps and roadblocks. You search for something like a political bumper sticker, we're going to put a speed bump up and say, hey, Mayor Reed, do you know what you're doing? Is this a life or death situation? Has 911 been called and the only thing you have is that it was a this type of a bumper sticker or this type of information? And the answer is yes, proceed. But as a reminder, this search is audited. And given the nature of your search, your administrator will be flagged that you've conducted this search. Because look, if it's all good, nothing to worry about. But hey, before you proceed, do that. And then there are clearly a handful of types of searches that are illegal, and we block those, right? And that's really simple to do. So we spend, and my team gets exhausted with this, we often spend more time ensuring the constitutional protection of our rights than it takes to just build the product in the first place. But what we understand is we have an obligation as a technology company to think 2 steps ahead, because you guys are busy as mayors. Police chiefs are busy. Like, they're not technologists either. They don't know what could not happen. And so we do take it on ourselves to kind of burden the responsibility to help protect our customers and our constituents.
This has been fascinating. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Larry.
No, it's well. I've been wondering about this, and I'll lighten things up a little bit. But Mayor Reed, I'm sure, has heard this before from another mayor who both of us have worked with and have admired. The first time I met Mike Bloomberg was the summer of 2007. I had won the Democratic primary, but the general election was coming up in November. Now, Garrett, I don't know how well you know Philly, but highly Democratic city. Generally in Philadelphia, if you win the Democratic primary, unless you are indicted and convicted, you will go on to win the general election. You need both. One is not the one is not enough. But that summer, I went to meet two mayors who I had never met before, but had long admired: Rich Daley in Chicago and Mike Bloomberg in New York. And one of the things that Mike said to me, which has stuck with me ever since: you can't have a great city if people don't feel safe. You can build buildings, you can do things, programs, projects, activities, all the other things that we do. But if folks are afraid to come outside their house, if they're going to worry about the kids going to school each and every day, if they're worried about going to work, if their grandmom can't go to the doctor, church, synagogue, mosque, temple, you can't have a great city. And so this issue about public safety is incredibly important. And the way you broke it down, I mean, yes, there's a contingent out there that, nothing should ever happen to anybody. And, they had a bad childhood and we failed them in schools, all of this stuff. Okay. But you just fucking shot somebody. So I can't deal with all the ills of society and all the other things. You just shot somebody, you beat somebody up, Mayor talked about you raped somebody, domestic abuse, whatever the case may be. So you made a certain set of decisions. I don't know why, but you did. And now we have to do something about that. That's civil society, right? And so Larry's laughing because he knows what I'm alluding to here in Philadelphia. But we'll put that to the side. Now, on the flip side of this, Mayor Reed has shared with us that early in his time, and I think you said your company is 7 years old. So would you have been able to find Mayor Reed's briefcase when it was taken?
He would have, because that briefcase was stolen, and it was a leather duffel. It was delightful. That duffel was stolen at Lenox Mall by the Neiman's parking lot, and my crack police team pulled the video. The video was blurry and unusual.
Could have been better.
Exactly.
We don't have blurry cameras.
He dropped the mic. He dropped the mic. Flock is better.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yes.
That's why I said he switched.
Before the criminal called me to let me know that my bag was behind the trash can at the gas station on Ponce de Leon, it was a fine decision by that criminal. We had pulled the video camera, and the video camera, we could not. All we could see was a bunch of blurry bodies going in my vehicle.
That's amazing.
And the briefcase, the duffel. So,
no, but Mayor, to your point, like I have the pleasure of knowing at this point hundreds of maybe thousands of mayors and chiefs, and everyone broadly wants the same thing for their city, which is for it to grow. Right? That's the American dream. Is we want to grow. We want more citizens. We want more tax revenue, obviously, and prospering cities. And I work with some cities that are really struggling. And I work with some cities that are thriving, and like you're right, it does actually start with being safe. And credit on my end, I'm a proud, lifelong Atlantan, and like during Mayor Reed's term, like the city got a whole lot safer, and then got a little bit less safe, and we're back to getting safe again. And like that changes the entire city's perspective on, as a business owner, do I want to invest in the city? As a resident, do I want to build a family here? And like those then actually feed off of each other. And you can't do anything else you want to do as a mayor without that.
People and capital flow to where they're needed and well cared for.
Garrett, I can't thank you enough for joining us and for the work you do. You're a terrific example of entrepreneurial citizenship, I think. And by the way, is Flock in Philadelphia?
Not yet, but I would love to make that happen. It might be one of the last majors. I think there's 3 or 4 major cities in America that aren't happily running on Flock, and Philly's one of them. So I'd love to, maybe Mayor Nutter, you and I can figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you more. We'll connect offline.
That sounds
That's
like
awesome.
Wow.
Well, that's it for this episode of How to Really Run a City. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and tell your friends about us. We really want to widen the conversation, because by 2050, something like 2/3 of the world will live in cities. As cities go, so goes the nation, and so goes the world. For now, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.